2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions.
Remarks, the gentleman from South Carolina, I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justifications to raise.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberty.
The House floor erupted in chaos when Representative Ilhan Omar's remarks came under intense scrutiny. Lawmakers accuse her of betraying her oath of office, claiming her comments about Somali interests went too far and ignited a political firestorm. At the center of the controversy were allegations that Omar placed Somalia's concerns above America's, an accusation her critics framed as deeply unpatriotic. This sparked a dramatic showdown in Congress where her loyalty and record were publicly questioned. During a heated session, several South Carolina representatives voiced strong objections to Omar's past statements, particularly her widely criticized remark about 9/11, when she said, "Some people did something." Many lawmakers argued that her words showed a troubling disregard for one of the darkest days in U.S. history. Her opponents insisted the comment downplayed the tragedy and disrespected the thousands of lives lost. That single moment continues to shadow Omar's political career, fueling ongoing debates and renewed calls for accountability.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A.1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows.
Recognized.
Censuring Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Whereas elected members of Congress take an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Whereas Representative Ilhan Omar took an oath of allegiance to the United States upon becoming a citizen, declaring, "I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen."
Tensions in Congress reached a boiling point when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Chip Roy took the floor, delivering one of the most explosive speeches the chamber had witnessed in years. Their remarks went far beyond challenging Representative Ilhan Omar's political views. They portrayed her as a direct threat to America's values and national security. With raised voices and fiery conviction, Greene and Roy presented their case for censure, arguing that Omar's actions proved she was working against the very nation she had sworn to protect. The room fell into a tense silence as their words reverberated across the chamber. Moments later, Marjorie Taylor Greene formally introduced a resolution to censure Omar. The resolution accused her of violating her oath of office, pointing to her naturalization, the moment she pledged to renounce allegiance to any foreign power. To strengthen her argument, Greene quoted passages from George Washington's farewell address, warning against the dangers of false patriotism and foreign influence. The historical reference gave her resolution added weight, framing Omar's alleged actions not really as political missteps, but as a potential betrayal of the very principles upon which America was founded.
Whereas on January 27, 2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions. Whereas Representative Omar assured the Somalians she spoke to, the U.S. government will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia. Whereas Representative Omar continued.
The resolution cited Representative Ilhan Omar's controversial remarks from January 2024 in Minneapolis, where she allegedly assured Somali Americans that the U.S. government would act in alignment with their community's interests. Marjorie Taylor Greene argued that this statement was evidence Omar was behaving like a foreign agent, using her position in Congress to protect Somalia's political influence and maritime interests from within the American system. The accusation sent shockwaves through the chamber, igniting a fierce debate over the boundaries between free speech, foreign loyalty, and political accountability. As Greene concluded her remarks, Congressman Chip Roy took the floor with equal intensity. He reminded lawmakers of past moments when political allegiance clashed with American duty, referencing Senate showdowns over judicial nominations and the controversial nuclear option. Roy framed Omar's situation as more than a single controversy. In his view, it represented a growing pattern of political behavior that undermines America's constitutional foundation. His passionate livery left the chamber silent, making it unmistakably clear where he stood on the matter.
For as long as I am in U.S. Congress, Somalia will never be in danger. Its waters will not be stolen by Ethiopia or others. Sleep in comfort knowing I am here to protect the interest of Somalia from inside the U.S. system. Whereas George Washington warned in his farewell address of 1796 to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism, and further declared citizens by birth or choice of a common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which
Omar's critics portrayed her as a lawmaker who repeatedly undermines American values while promoting radical ideologies. They pointed to her voting record, claiming she opposed stronger border security, supported lenient crime policies, and aligned herself with globalist agendas that threatened U.S. sovereignty. Marjorie Taylor Greene emphasized this point forcefully, arguing that Omar's priorities were completely disconnected from the struggles of ordinary Americans. Her words resonated deeply with conservatives who have long viewed Omar as one of the most divisive figures in Washington. But these speeches went far beyond routine political debate. They became a rallying cry for the America First movement. Greene and Chip Roy framed the issue as a clear choice: patriotism or betrayal, standing up for the U.S. Constitution or siding with foreign interests. Their impassioned stance energized not only Republicans, but also independents and even a handful of Democrats who have grown increasingly frustrated with Omar with ongoing controversies. For many, this moment marked a turning point, a declaration that politicians could no longer hide behind political correctness, but must finally confront where their true loyalties lie.
Belongs to you in your national capacity must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. Whereas these statements by Representative Omar clearly violate the oath she took as an elected member of Congress to defend and protect the United States Constitution. Whereas Representative Omar has exhibited the treasonous tendencies George Washington warned about, and her actions must be condemned by all members of Congress who adhere to the oath they took upon assuming office.
Outside Washington, Representative Ilhan Omar's political future appears more uncertain than ever. Reports indicate that even within her own district, support is starting to waver as voters question whether she still represents their values and priorities. The backlash has become so intense that some political analysts are calling this moment a potential turning point, perhaps even the beginning of the end of her congressional career. Greene and Roy's fiery confrontation on the House floor may have been the final push, swaying undecided voters to reconsider their loyalty. The pressure on Omar is mounting, and she now faces one of the toughest political battles of her career. Yet, this controversy has grown beyond one lawmaker. It has become a defining moment for the direction of American politics itself. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Chip Roy framed their speeches not just as criticism, but as a call to action for patriots across the nation. They declared that any leader who turns away from core American values will be held accountable and ultimately removed from power. Whether Omar manages to survive politically or not, the message from Congress is clear. Divided loyalties will no longer be tolerated. For conservatives, this censure was more than a political move. It was a declaration of strength, signaling what they see as the beginning of a new era in Washington.
Whereas by openly admitting her efforts to advance Somalia's interest using her position as a United States representative, Representative Omar has revealed herself to be a foreign agent acting on behalf of a foreign government. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota be censured. Representative Ilhan Omar forthwith present herself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. Representative Ilhan Omar be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and Representative Ilhan Omar be and is hereby removed from the Committee of the Budget and the Committee on Education and the Workforce.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Appreciate the chairman.
As the floor debate intensified, supporters of the censure resolution insisted that this was not about partisanship. It was about protecting America from divided loyalty. They argue that Omar's own words proved she was prioritizing Somalia's interests over America's, a stance they deemed completely unacceptable for a sitting U.S. lawmaker. The atmosphere in the chamber grew increasingly tense as Republican leaders emphasized that the oath of office must carry real meaning. Anything less, they warned, would undermine the integrity and trust placed in Congress itself. Marjorie Taylor Greene's passionate speech went beyond criticizing Omar's record. It aimed to set a precedent for the future. She declared that foreign allegiances and American leadership simply cannot coexist, and that every representative must place the Constitution above all else. By drawing a direct link between Omar's alleged promises to Somali communities and her voting history in Congress, Greene framed the issue as one of national security. Her words were crafted to strike a chord with voters who already believe Washington has drifted from its core values. Chip Roy followed, seizing on the momentum. He reminded lawmakers that Congress has faced moments like this before, moments where the nation's principles and political loyalties collided, and that this was yet another defining test of America's resolve.
I do associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman from Kentucky, but also the gentleman from South Carolina, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the gentlelady, all the remarks that we've been talking about over here. And I appreciate the spirit of the remarks from the gentleman from Colorado. Would note that we're here for a very obvious reason. The door was opened, and now we're dealing with that. And the door shouldn't have been opened. I'm reminded when I was in the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2005, and Miguel Estrada was being filibustered by the Democrat majority at the time. And we know why. We know this because a memo that said very specifically that he was being filibustered because he was an Hispanic conservative was found, but then shoved aside. We couldn't talk about it because it was found on a server, and they said, we shouldn't get it. There's a whole lot of backstory on that. But there was a lot of drama around that. There were 7 judges being held up: Priscilla Owen, Janice Rogers Brown, because she's black. That was all happening. We just sweep that aside. And you fast forward, and Bill Frist was being pressured to deploy the nuclear option.
Chip Roy drew historical parallels, recalling how pivotal decisions like the Senate's use of the nuclear option had permanently reshaped American politics. In his view, Omar's case represented yet another critical turning point, one that would test whether Congress still had the courage to hold its own members accountable. Roy's appeal was deliberately framed as bipartisan. He urged lawmakers on both sides of the aisle to treat the matter with the seriousness it deserved, rather than dismissing it as mere political theater. Throughout the debate, Omar's most controversial remarks were replayed and dissected. Critics zeroed in on her alleged statement that the U.S. government would act according to the wishes of Somali Americans, a claim they argued was clear evidence of forward influence. They also pointed to her vow to defend Somalia's territorial waters and national interests, saying such remarks went far beyond the bounds of free speech and into the realm of divided loyalty.
I remember being part of all those conversations, the Senate lawyer and the Judiciary Committee. Bill first decided not to deploy the nuclear option. In 2013, Harry Reid did deploy the nuclear option. 2017, then certain things changed at the United States Supreme Court. So now we live in that world. It is what it is. Now here we sit. The door was open. I just went back and reread my speech on the floor because the gentleman, I hadn't done that yet. I went back and reread my speech on the floor. I stand by every word of that speech. And in it, I referenced the fact that I just a few months prior had been in agreement with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with respect to January 6th, which there's disagreements on our side of the aisle on some of that with respect to the votes at the time, and that I'd taken very strong disagreement and sought apology from our colleague on our side of the aisle about some of the remarks that were said, but felt that this was not the right path to go down. I stand by that. So here we sit. I could associate myself and do with all the remarks the gentleman from South Carolina. I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justification.
Greene and Roy insisted that Omar's remarks were not accidental slips of the tongue. They revealed her true agenda. By repeatedly citing her past statements, the two lawmakers drove home the message that Omar could no longer be trusted with public office. The debate cut to the very core of American identity. Greene argued that whether citizens are American by birth or by choice, their loyalty must belong to one nation, the United States. She invoked George Washington's farewell address to warn against the dangers of divided patriotism, grounding her message in the words of America's first president. This historical reference gave her speech additional moral weight, framing Omar's actions not as political disagreements, but as a betrayal of the values upon which the nation was founded. Greene portrayed the censure as an act of national defense, not partisan warfare. Omar's defenders countered that her statements were being taken out of context, insisting that political speech, no matter how controversial, should not be punished with censure. But Greene and Roy rejected that argument outright, claiming the record spoke for itself. To them, this was not a matter of free expression, but a question of divided loyalty and misuse of power. The clash laid bare the deep ideological divide within Congress, where every word from Omar was dissected and weighed against her oath of office. Greene's resolution went even further, calling for Omar's removal from key committees, including the Budget and Education and Workforce panels. Supporters argued that allowing her to serve on such influential bodies while allegedly prioritizing Somalia's interests posed a direct threat to national policy. This proposal elevated the stakes, transforming a confrontation into a broader fight over the integrity of Congress itself. Outside the chamber, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Conservative media outlets hailed Greene and Roy's speeches as historic, a long overdue stand for American values. Commentators framed the censure as a victory for patriots demanding leaders who put the nation first. Clips of the fiery debate flooded social media, going viral and energizing conservative grassroots movements across the country. On the other side, progressive voices accused Greene and Roy of weaponizing the censure for political gain, using Omar as a target to rally their base. They warned that such actions could set a dangerous precedent for punishing dissenting speech. Yet, even among Democrats, quiet unease began to surface. The bluntness of Omar's past statements made it difficult for her defenders to mount a full-throated counter-argument.
The divide underscored just how polarizing Omar's presence in Congress has become. As the dust settled, one thing was undeniable. This was a defining moment for Congress. Greene and Roy's fiery speeches will be remembered as the moment they drew a line in the sand, declaring that America would no longer tolerate divided loyalty among its lawmakers. Whether Omar survives politically or not, a new standard has been set. For conservatives, it marked a defining victory. For Omar, it became the toughest battle of her career. And for America, it signaled that the fight over loyalty, patriotism, and national identity is far from over.